In 2020, one of the largest beauty conglomerates on the planet paid $200 million for a piece of Kim Kardashian. 5 years later, they sold that piece back. The price was never disclosed. But here is what almost nobody noticed. By the time Coty walked away, their own accountants had already marked that investment down to about $4.5 million. Read that again. $200 million, written down on the company's own books, to roughly $4.6 million. That is not a bad investment. That is a near total wipeout, hidden inside a quarterly filing that the celebrity press never opened. So how does a corporation operating in over 150 countries hand a reality star $200 million and end up with almost nothing? And why, while this was happening, was Kim quietly building a separate company that just hit a $5 billion valuation, one that Coty was never allowed to touch? Stick with us, because we are going to take this apart like an autopsy, in 3 parts. First, the desperate reason this deal even happened, which has almost nothing to do with makeup. Second, the slow collapse and the accounting trick that buried it. And third, the brand Coty never owned, the one that made the entire bet look like a distraction. Let us start with why Coty was at the table in the first place, because the real story begins years before Kim ever signed anything. You might assume a giant like Coty bought into Kim Kardashian because they loved her brand. The truth is closer to panic. Back in 2016, Coty had made an enormous bet, paying $12.5 billion to buy a pile of beauty brands from Procter & Gamble. It went badly. By 2019, they were forced to write down around $3 billion in value, and the company was drowning in roughly $8 billion of debt. In 2020, Coty's stock had collapsed by nearly 2/3. And here is the part the gossip channels skip entirely. Coty is not really run by beauty executives. It is controlled by a private investment group called JB Holding, the vehicle of the German billionaire Reimann family. The man steering these celebrity deals, Chairman Peter Harf, was a founding partner of JAB. So this was never a love letter to cosmetics. It was a debt rescue mission run by financiers who needed young, viral brands to convince Wall Street the company still had a future. They moved fast. In late 2019, Coty bought 51% of Kylie Jenner's cosmetics line for $600 million. Then, in June 2020, they came for Kim. $200 million for 20% of KKW Beauty, valuing her 3-year-old makeup brand at $1 billion. And there was a clause almost no one reported. Coty secured an option to buy a majority stake later, exactly like they had with Kylie. They fully intended to own her one day. But even as the ink dried, the cracks were already there. At the very same time, the company that actually manufactured both Kim's and Kylie's products, a quiet incubator called Seed Beauty, sued. Seed claimed the Coty deals threatened to leak its trade secrets, the digital-first playbook that built these brands. A judge granted a temporary injunction. The whole machine behind the Kardashian beauty empire was tangled in a legal fight before Coty ever made a cent. So that is part 1. A debt-loaded conglomerate steered by private equity, buying celebrity relevance to save itself, while the factory behind the brand was already in court. Now let us get to the collapse, and the number Coty really did not want you to do the math on. If you are finding this useful, take 1 second to subscribe, because this next part is where $200 million quietly turns to dust. The first real warning sign came almost immediately. Within months of the deal, Kim shut down the KKW Beauty website entirely. The official reason was a rebrand into something more modern and sustainable. The unofficial reason was personal. The 2 Ks stood for Kardashian West, and Kim was in the middle of her very public divorce from Kanye. The W had to go. In 2022, the replacement arrived. SKKN by Kim, and this is where the business logic falls apart. SKKN launched as a 9-step skincare system, with a full routine costing around $600. A single serum ran $95. The cleanser alone was $43. Now remember why Coty bought in. They wanted young, social, everyday shoppers. But you cannot sell a $600 ritual to a teenager scrolling on her phone. Even Kim's own circle pushed back. Bethany Frankel went on TikTok and called it a rich person's game. And the sales told the same story. Coty never reports brand-level revenue, so we lean on the analysts who track this. At the time of the acquisition, the business was estimated to do somewhere between $100 million and $150 million a year. By the end, analysts at Jefferies estimated SKKN had collapsed to roughly $30 million in sales. Some industry reports put it even lower, closer to $20 million. Whichever figure you trust, the brand had lost the majority of its revenue. We are now at the halfway mark, so let us take stock. Coty paid $200 million. The brand got shut down, renamed, priced for the rich, and bled most of its sales. Now watch how they made the loss disappear on paper. Here is the mechanism almost no video explains. When you own a minority slice of a struggling company, you do not just sit on the original price. Every year that the business loses money, you write down the value of your stake. So quietly, quarter after quarter, Coty's $200 million investment shrank on their books. By late 2024, their own filing valued the entire KKW holding at just $4.6 million. The $200 million was already gone, erased in slow motion, long before any headline. Then, in early 2025, came the exit. When Coty finally offloaded its stake, it booked a loss of $71.1 million tied to that beauty business. And because of how this kind of investment is taxed, it was treated as a capital loss the company could not even use to lower its tax bill, with no silver lining at all. That single beauty exit helped drag Coty to an operating loss of over $280 million for the quarter, in a period where the year before they had made a profit. By June of 2025, SKKN by Kim was officially dead. 3 years, closed for good, and the mainstream press barely blinked, because half the celebrity beauty industry was collapsing that same year. But Coty did not stop at SKKN. The same company was busy selling off its Wella hair empire to the private equity firm KKR. It was about to lose its crown jewel Gucci fragrance license. Its longtime chief executive, Sue Nabi, was on her way out, and its stock fell more than 50% across 2025. The Kim deal was not an isolated mistake. It was one symptom of a company in full retreat. So who actually won here? Because someone did. And that brings us to part 3, the brand Coty never owned. Here is the move that makes Kim look less like a celebrity and more like a strategist. While KKW and then SKKN were quietly dying under Coty's part ownership, Kim was building a completely separate company on her own. Skims, the shapewear and clothing brand she launched in 2019. Coty had no stake in it. None. It was never part of any of these deals. And Skims did exactly what the beauty brand was supposed to do. It exploded. In November 2025, a funding round led by Goldman Sachs valued Skims at $5 billion, with the brand closing in on $1 billion in annual sales. It pushed into loungewear, swimwear, menswear, and physical stores around the world. The loyal, spending audience that Coty thought it was buying through Kim's makeup, that audience actually showed up, just for the company Coty had no piece of. Then came the final twist. In March 2025, Skims stepped in and bought out Coty's 20% of the beauty business, and also absorbed Kim's own majority share. In one move, everything Kim had built, the clothing, the skincare, the cosmetics, the fragrance, landed under a single roof that she controlled. The conglomerate that once dreamed of owning a majority of her empire ended up selling its piece back, while Kim consolidated all of it, and the next chapter is already loading. In late 2025, Skims hired a respected beauty founder to build out Skims Beauty, aiming for a relaunch under the one brand that actually worked, this time with no outside partner holding any strings. So step back and look at the whole board. A global beauty giant, run by financiers trying to dig out of debt, paid $200 million chasing the Kardashian audience. It watched that stake quietly erode to almost nothing on its own books, took a loss it could not even write off, and shut the brand down. And the entire time, the real prize, the audience it actually wanted, was sitting inside Skims, the one company it was structurally locked out of. That is the part Wall Street will never put in a press release. The headline deal was almost never the real deal. The $200 million was the show. The $5 billion was the business. If this changed how you see the Kardashian money machine, hit subscribe, because every week we open up the filings behind a famous name and show you what the headlines leave out. And tell us in the comments, did Coty get outplayed from day one, or did they simply back the wrong sister? We read every single reply.